You made your choice. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole really goes.
3 days before my wedding, my wife-to-be Lauren came home smelling like gin and somebody else's cologne. I should have known right then that my life was about to implode in spectacular fashion. "Nick, we need to talk," she said, not even bothering to look me in the eye as she dropped her purse on our kitchen counter with the kind of finality that makes your stomach drop. I was sitting at our dining table, going over the final head count for Saturday's reception. $23,000 down the drain, as it would turn out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" I asked, though the sarcasm in my voice was probably thick enough to cut with a knife. After 8 years in corporate sales, you develop a sixth sense for when someone's about to screw you over. Lauren finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before, guilt mixed with defiance, like a kid caught stealing cookies but determined to finish eating them anyway. "The wedding's off," she said, just like that. No preamble, no gentle letdown. "I'm in love with your brother." For a moment, the words didn't compute. Tom? My younger brother, Tom, the cocky little coward who worked in the same company as us, always trying to one-up me at family dinners? The same Tom who'd been acting weird lately, suddenly flush with cash, and driving a new BMW he claimed was a company bonus? "Well," I said, setting down my pen with deliberate calm, "I'm not going to hold you back." But inside my head, a different conversation was happening. The kind of conversation that would make a therapist rich. Because here's the thing about being the family underdog. You learn to watch, to listen, to notice the details everyone else misses. And I'd been noticing a lot of details lately. Like how Lauren's phone never left her hand anymore. Like how she'd started working late 3 nights a week. Always with urgent client meetings. Like how Paul Bennett, my direct competitor in the sales department, had been lingering around Lauren's office more often than seemed professional. "That's it?" Lauren asked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "You're just going to let me walk away? What do you want me to say? That I'll fight for you? That I'll beg?" I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. That surprised me. "You've made your choice. I respect that." What I didn't say was, "Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes." The next morning at work, my assistant Janine slid a folded piece of paper across my desk while pretending to deliver quarterly reports. "Someone left this for you," she whispered, glancing around the open plan office like we were conducting an illegal substance deal. I unfolded the note, anonymous, printed from a computer. "Check the security camera footage in parking level C, timestamp, Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. Tuesday, the night Lauren claimed she was in a client dinner that ran late." I looked up at Janine, who was trying very hard to look innocent while organizing files that were already perfectly organized. "Any idea who—" "Nope," she said quickly. "But hypothetically, if someone wanted to access security footage, they might talk to Jerry in maintenance." Hypothetically. That afternoon, Jerry, a 50-something guy who'd been working building security since before email was invented, and I had a very hypothetical conversation over coffee in the parking garage. "Hypothetically," Jerry said, "if someone wanted to see footage from Tuesday night, they might find it very interesting. Hypothetically, that footage might show Mrs. Carver and Mr. Bennett having what looked like a very intimate conversation by his car." He handed me a USB drive. "Jerry," I said, "hypothetically, you're a gentleman and a scholar. That night, alone in my basement man cave, I plugged in the drive and watched my world shift on its axis. There was Lauren, all right, but she wasn't with Tom. She was with Paul Bennett, and they were doing a lot more than talking. I sat back in my chair and started laughing. Not the kind of laugh you hear at comedy shows, the kind that probably would have worried Lauren if she'd been there to hear it. Tom wasn't Lauren's lover. He was her patsy. And Paul Bennett, that arrogant coward who'd been trying to steal my clients for 2 years, had just handed me the ammunition I needed to destroy them both. I opened my laptop and started making a list. The thing about revenge is that it requires patience and planning and a complete willingness to embrace your inner coward. Lucky for me, I'd been suppressing my inner coward for 38 years. He was eager to come out and play. First, I hired a private investigator, not some movie stereotype with a trench coat and a drinking problem, but a sharp-eyed ex-cop named Rita Valdez who specialized in corporate investigations and charged reasonable rates. "What exactly are you looking for?" she asked during our meeting at a downtown coffee shop that was noisy enough to cover our conversation. "Evidence," I said. Financial records, communication patterns, anything that shows a pattern of deception. My soon-to-be ex-wife and my colleague are having an affair, but I think there's more to it. Rita nodded, making notes in a small leather notebook. Corporate affairs often involve more than just sex. Money, insider information, career advancement. It's usually a package deal. She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, Rita's investigation revealed a web of deception that was almost impressive in its scope. Paul had been feeding Lauren inside information about client accounts, helping her land deals that should have gone to other team members. In return, Lauren had been sharing confidential salary information from her position in HR, information Paul used to negotiate his own raises and bonuses. But the real kicker came when Rita discovered the financial records. "Your wife has been receiving payments from an offshore account," she told me during our second meeting. $5,000 a month for the past 8 months. The account traces back to a shell company that Paul Bennett established in Delaware. He's been paying her? Looks like it. Could be for the insider information. Could be something else. But there's more. Rita slid a photograph across the table. This was taken last Thursday at the Marriott downtown. The photo showed Lauren and Paul entering a hotel room, but they weren't alone. With them was Derek Mason, Paul's wingman from the marketing department, and Melissa Torres, Lauren's best friend who worked in accounting. "A conspiracy," I murmured. "A conspiracy," Rita confirmed. And conspiracies have a way of falling apart when pressure's applied in the right places. That weekend, I put my plan into motion. Step 1 was simple. I planted a GPS tracker on Lauren's car. Not some high-tech spy gadget, just a basic Find My Device tracker that I registered to my Apple account. Completely legal since the car was registered in both our names. Step 2 required more finesse. I started showing up at Murphy's Bar, the dive where half our office went to drink and gossip after work. I became a regular, buying rounds for the usual suspects, listening to the rumor mill and carefully planting seeds of suspicion. "You know," I said to Janet from accounting one Thursday night, "it's funny how Lauren always seems to know which clients are about to sign big contracts, almost like she has inside information." Janet said, already 3 beers in and ready to gossip. "Now that you mention it, she did seem awfully confident about the Morrison account, even before the client meeting happened. By Friday, the rumor mill was churning. By Monday, people were asking questions. Step 3 was my masterpiece. I waited until Paul was in his weekly meeting with the regional director, a meeting that typically ran 2 hours and was considered sacred time that couldn't be interrupted. Then I called the city parking authority and reported his BMW as an abandoned vehicle blocking a fire lane. It wasn't, of course. It was legally parked in his assigned spot. But it took 3 hours for Paul to sort out the confusion, during which time he missed his meeting, lost a potential client, and got a very public dressing down from the regional director in front of the entire sales floor. "Somebody's got it out for you, Paul," I said with mock sympathy as he stood fuming by his towed car space. "Any idea who?" The look he gave me was pure poison. "Good. I wanted him angry. Angry people make mistakes." That night, Lauren came home late again. This time, she didn't bother with excuses. "I know what you're doing," she said, standing in our living room with her arms crossed. "I'm watching Netflix and eating leftover pizza," I replied, not looking up from the TV. "Pretty standard Tuesday night." "You're sabotaging Paul." "Am I? That's a serious accusation." I paused the show and looked at her. "Are you sleeping with Paul, Lauren?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. We're not," she stammered. "Because if you were sleeping with Paul," I continued conversationally, "that would make this whole situation a lot more interesting, especially considering the payments he's been making to your personal account." Lauren's face went white. "How did you know about the money? Lucky guess." I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of wine. "Care to explain why your lover has been paying you $5,000 a month?" "He's not my lover." "Right, and I'm the Pope." I took a sip of wine. "Here's what's going to happen, Lauren. You're going to pack your things and move out. Tonight. And you're going to stay away from Tom, because dragging my brother into your mess was a particularly cruel touch. You can't prove anything." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Sweetheart," I said, "I don't have to prove anything. I just have to destroy your reputation. And trust me, I'm very, very good at my job." The next morning, Lauren was gone. But she'd left something behind, a positive pregnancy test on the bathroom counter. The timeline didn't add up. We hadn't been intimate in 2 months. I called Rita. I need a paternity test, I said, and I need to know everything about my wife's activities over the past 3 months. Everything. This is getting complicated, Rita warned. Good, I said. Complicated means more people to take down. The company's monthly all-hands meeting was held in the main conference room on the 15th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and a long mahogany table that made everyone feel important. 43 people crammed into a space designed for 30, all pretending to care about quarterly projections and market penetration strategies. I'd been planning this moment for 2 weeks. Before we begin, I said, standing up as Regional Director Matthews was shuffling through his presentation notes, I have something to share with the group. It concerns corporate ethics and information security. Matthews looked annoyed. Nick, this isn't really the time. Actually, it's exactly the time. I opened my laptop and connected it to the room's projection system. See, I've discovered that someone in this room has been selling confidential client information, and I have proof. The room went dead silent. Paul, sitting 3 seats away from me, had gone pale. Lauren, who'd been avoiding eye contact since arriving, was staring at her hands. 2 weeks ago, the Morrison account, worth approximately $200,000 in annual revenue, was mysteriously lost to our competitor, Davidson Industries. The client cited concerns about information security as their reason for leaving. I clicked to the first slide, a timeline of client communications. What's interesting is that Davidson Industries contacted Morrison with a counterproposal exactly 24 hours after our internal strategy meeting, a meeting where we discussed our pricing structure, our timeline, and our client retention strategies. Click. Next slide. Financial records. Even more interesting is this pattern of payments from a Delaware-based shell company to a personal bank account belonging to someone in this room. $5,000 a month for 8 months, $40,000 total. Paul started to stand up. This is harassment. Sit down, Paul. My voice carried enough authority that he actually did it. I'm not done. Click. Security footage from the parking garage. This is from our building security system. Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. That's Lauren Carver and Paul Bennett. They appear to be having an intimate conversation. About business, I'm sure. Lauren's face was bright red. Half the room was staring at her, the other half at Paul. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Click. Bank records. The shell company that's been paying Lauren, it's registered to Paul Bennett. So, essentially, Paul has been paying my fiancé for confidential information, which he then used to sabotage our client relationships. Regional Director Matthews was taking notes furiously. This is a very serious accusation, Nick. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. I looked directly at Paul. Would you like to explain to everyone why you've been paying my fiancé $40,000? Paul's composure finally cracked. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You smug coward, he snarled. You think you're so smart, don't you? You have no idea what you're talking about. Then enlighten us. Lauren came to me. She needed money for her mother's medical bills, and you were too cheap to help. I was being a friend. It was a good lie. It might have even worked if I hadn't done my homework. Interesting theory, I said, except Lauren's mother died 3 years ago. And the payments started 8 months ago, right around the time you two began your affair. The room erupted, voices overlapping, people standing up, chairs scraping against the floor. In the chaos, I caught sight of Derek Mason trying to slip out the back door. Derek, I called out, don't leave. You're part of this too. Derek froze like a deer in headlights. See, Derek has been helping Paul and Lauren coordinate their little scheme. He's the one who's been passing messages, scheduling their meetings, and providing alibis when needed. In exchange, Paul promised him a promotion to senior marketing manager. I clicked to the final slide. Email records. These are emails from Derek's company account to Paul's personal Gmail. They detail client meeting schedules, internal strategy discussions, and, my personal favorite, a message that says, and I quote, Nick is getting suspicious. Maybe we should cool it for a while. Derek's face was the color of old newspaper. Regional Director Matthews stood up. This meeting is over. Paul, Lauren, Derek, my office now. Everyone else, please return to your desks while we sort this out. But I wasn't done. There's one more thing, I said as people started filing out. Lauren's pregnant. The room went silent again. Lauren looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Congratulations are in order, I suppose. Except the timing is interesting. See, Lauren and I haven't been intimate in over 2 months. Which means the baby isn't mine. I looked at Paul. Care to comment? Paul's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Actually, I continued, I had a paternity test done. Prenatal, completely safe, just required a blood sample from Lauren, which I obtained through a private investigator when Lauren visited her doctor last week. Lauren shot to her feet. You had no right. I had every right. You're still my fiancé, technically, and the results were illuminating. I paused for dramatic effect. The baby isn't Paul's either. The silence was deafening. According to the test results, the father is someone named Marcus Webb. Ring any bells, Lauren? Lauren's face went from red to white to green in the span of 5 seconds. Marcus Webb, I continued, is a bartender at Murphy's Bar, 26 years old, criminal record for petty theft, currently dating 2 other women. Quite a catch. Melissa Torres, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly burst into tears. I told her not to do it, she sobbed. I told her it was too risky, sleeping around while she was engaged. But she said she needed to feel alive, needed to feel wanted. Melissa, shut up, Lauren hissed, but Melissa was beyond stopping. And then when she found out she was pregnant, she panicked. She didn't know who the father was, so she decided to frame Nick's brother Tom, make it look like she was leaving Nick for his family. She thought it would be easier to explain. The pieces were falling into place. Tom wasn't Lauren's lover or her sufferer. He was her scapegoat. But Paul offered her a better deal, I said, understanding dawning. He'd pay her to leave me and cover her expenses in exchange for inside information about our clients. 2 birds, 1 stone. Paul finally found his voice. This is insane. You're making all of this up. Am I? I pulled out my phone and played an audio recording. Lauren's voice, clear as day. Paul, I need more money. The baby's going to be expensive, and Nick's getting suspicious about the bank deposits. Paul's voice responded, I'll transfer another $5,000, but this has to be the last time. Derek thinks someone's been watching us. I recorded that conversation 3 days ago, I said. Lauren rear-dialed me while she was in Paul's car. Amazing what people say when they think no one's listening. Regional Director Matthews was writing furiously. Paul, you're suspended pending investigation. Lauren, your employment is terminated effective immediately. Derek, we'll discuss your situation privately. But I still wasn't done. As people filed out of the conference room, I walked over to where Lauren was gathering her things. You know what the funny thing is? I said quietly. If you'd just been honest with me, if you'd just said you wanted out of the relationship, I would have let you go. No drama, no revenge, no public humiliation. Lauren looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Nick, But you had to be greedy. You had to try to take me down with you. You had to drag my brother into it, steal from my company, and lie to everyone who cared about you. I leaned closer. So, now you get to explain to your parents why the wedding's off. You get to explain to your friends why you're unemployed and pregnant with a bartender's baby. You get to explain to everyone why you threw away 8 years for $40,000 and a few nights with Paul Bennett. Lauren was crying openly now. And here's the best part, I said, straightening up. I'm keeping the house. It's in my name. I'm keeping the car, also in my name. And I'm keeping the dog, because Buster never liked you anyway. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Lauren, your parents called this morning. They want to know when you're going to pay them back for the wedding deposits. I gave them your new phone number. As I left the conference room, I could hear Lauren sobbing behind me. Phase 1 was complete. But I was just getting started. The beauty of corporate revenge is that it's self-sustaining. Once you light the fuse, the explosion spreads on its own. By the end of the week, Paul had been fired for corporate espionage. Derek had been demoted to junior marketing associate, essentially an intern position at age 34. And Lauren had been escorted from the building by security after trying to access her computer files one last time. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. See, Paul had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. He thought I was just another corporate drone, too polite and too weak to fight back. He was about to learn otherwise. I spent the weekend doing research. Paul Bennett, it turned out, had a very interesting financial situation. 3 credit cards maxed out, a mortgage that was underwater, and a car loan with payments that were consistently late. The $40,000 he'd paid Lauren had come from somewhere, and I was pretty sure it wasn't his savings account. Monday morning, I made a phone call to the IRS whistleblower hotline. I'd like to report suspected tax evasion, I told the agent. I have documentation of unreported income from a shell company, false business deductions, and possible money laundering. I spent an hour walking them through Paul's financial records, the Delaware Shell Company, and the pattern of payments to Lauren. By the end of the call, they were very interested in having a conversation with Mr. Bennett. Tuesday, I called Paul's mortgage company and his credit card companies. As a concerned former colleague, I felt they should know that Paul had recently been fired for corporate espionage and might have difficulty making future payments. Wednesday, I contacted the Massachusetts State Bar Association. Paul had a law degree, inactive but still on record, and lawyers are held to certain ethical standards even when they're not practicing. The Bar Association was very interested to hear about his recent activities. By Thursday, Paul's world was collapsing. I was having lunch at Murphy's Bar when he found me. "You idiot," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You're destroying my life." "I'm not doing anything," I said, cutting into my burger. "I'm just sharing information with interested parties. Public service, really. The IRS froze my bank accounts. My mortgage company is threatening foreclosure. My credit cards are canceled." "That's terrible," I said with mock sympathy. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to steal from my company and sleep with my fiancée." Paul leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you're dealing with." "Enlighten me." "Lauren wasn't the only one. There are 3 other women in the company who've been feeding me information. Sarah from HR, Jennifer from accounting, and that little blonde in marketing, what's her name, Ashley?" I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was smiling. Paul was panicking, and panicked people make mistakes. "Interesting," I said. "Tell me more." "I've got dirt on half the management team, related to Zek's harassment, embezzlement, insider trading, you name it. You want to play hardball? I'll burn this whole company down." "Paul," I said, setting down my burger, "you're not thinking clearly. See, if you had dirt on the management team, you would have used it already. You're desperate, and desperate people say stupid things." I leaned back in the booth. "But let's say you're telling the truth. Let's say you do have compromising information about other people. What makes you think I care? I don't work there anymore." Paul's face went white. "What?" "I quit this morning. Gave my 2 weeks' notice, cleaned out my desk, said goodbye to my colleagues." I smiled. "I'm starting my own consulting firm. Already have 3 clients lined up, all former clients of our old company who were impressed by my investigative skills." "You can't do that. You signed a non-compete agreement." "Actually, I didn't. I was never required to sign one because I was never considered a flight risk. Management thought I was too loyal, too much of a team player to ever leave." I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. They were wrong. That night, Lauren called me. "Nick, please," she said, her voice thick with tears. "You have to stop this. Paul's threatening to end himself." "That's unfortunate," I said, "but not really my problem. You're destroying innocent people." "Innocent?" I laughed. "Lauren, you stole from my company, cheated on me with multiple men, and tried to frame my brother for your own mistakes. Paul committed corporate espionage and tried to blackmail me. Where exactly is the innocence in this situation?" "What about the baby? Your actions are affecting an innocent child." "You're right," I said. "That child deserves better than you as a mother. Maybe you should consider adoption." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "I never knew you could be this cruel," she finally whispered. "You never knew me at all," I replied. "If you had, you never would have tried to screw me over." I hung up. Friday afternoon, I got a call from Rita, my private investigator. "You need to see this," she said. "Can you meet me at the coffee shop in an hour?" When I arrived, Rita was sitting in our usual corner booth with a manila folder in front of her. "Paul's been busy," she said, sliding the folder across the table. "After your conversation on Thursday, he went to Derek and Melissa. They're planning something." I opened the folder. Inside were photographs of Paul, Derek, and Melissa meeting at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. The timestamps showed they'd been there for 3 hours. "What kind of something?" "The kind that involves baseball bats and a plan to catch you alone in a parking garage." I looked up at Rita. "They're planning to attack me?" "That's what it looks like. Derek's been asking around about your schedule, where you go for lunch, what time you leave the gym. And Melissa's been posting on social media about how you destroyed innocent people and deserve what's coming." I studied the photographs. Paul looked desperate, Derek looked angry, and Melissa looked unhinged. "When?" "Tomorrow night. They think you'll be at Murphy's Bar like you have been every Friday for the past month." I smiled. "Perfect." Perfect. Nick, they're planning to hurt you. No, I said, closing the folder. They're planning to incriminate themselves. There's a difference. Saturday night, I was indeed at Murphy's bar, but I wasn't alone. Rita was at the bar, nursing a beer and keeping an eye on the front door. Jerry from building security was in a booth near the back playing pool with some friends, and Detective Ray Morrison, a friend from college who owed me a favor, was sitting in his unmarked car in the parking lot. At 9:47 p.m., Paul, Derek, and Melissa walked into the bar. They tried to look casual, but they were about as subtle as a brick through a window. Derek kept checking his watch, Melissa was sweating despite the air conditioning, and Paul looked like he was about to throw up. I finished my beer and walked toward the back exit, making sure they saw me leave. The parking lot behind Murphy's was dimly lit and mostly empty, perfect for an ambush if you were stupid enough to try one. I was halfway to my car when they made their move. "Nick," Paul called out, "we need to talk." I turned around. All three of them were walking toward me, and Derek was carrying what looked like a tire iron. "About what?" I asked. "About how you're going to leave us alone," Derek said, hefting the tire iron. "About how you're going to stop destroying people's lives." "Or what?" "Or we're going to teach you a lesson," Melissa said. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were wild. "You think you can just ruin people and walk away? You think there are no consequences?" I looked at the three of them, desperate, angry, and about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. "Actually," I said, "I think the consequences are about to be very clear." That's when Detective Morrison's spotlight hit them. "Police, drop your weapons and put your hands up." Derek dropped the tire iron like it was on fire. Melissa started crying. Paul just stood there, mouth hanging open. "You set us up," he said. "I sure did," I replied, as Morrison and two other officers approached with handcuffs. "Conspiracy to commit attack, carrying a dangerous weapon, criminal threatening. You're looking at serious jail time." As they were being arrested, Melissa was screaming at me. "You're evil, you're a monster, we were just trying to protect ourselves." "No," I said calmly. "You were trying to commit a felony. There's a difference." Paul was the last one to be put in the police car. As the officer was reading him his rights, he looked at me one more time. "This isn't over," he said. "Yeah," I replied, "it is." But I was wrong. There was still one more act to this play. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, a corner suite in a downtown high-rise with my name on the door and a view of the harbor, when my secretary buzzed me. "Mr. Carver?" "There's a Lauren Carver here to see you. She says it's urgent." I looked up from the contract I was reviewing. Lauren. I hadn't seen her since the day she was escorted out of our old building. "Send her in." Lauren looked terrible. She was 8 months pregnant, wearing a cheap maternity dress that had seen better days, and her hair looked like she'd been cutting it herself. The confident, put-together woman I'd once planned to marry was gone. "Hello, Nick," she said, settling carefully into the chair across from my desk. "Lauren, you look different." "I look poor," she said bluntly, "because I am poor. I'm living in a studio apartment in Dorchester, working part-time at a call center, and eating ramen noodles for dinner." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not." She shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "You're exactly where you wanted me to be." I didn't deny it. "Paul, Derek, and Melissa are in prison," she continued. "Paul got 3 years for the corporate espionage and the attack charges. Derek got 18 months. Melissa got a year. I know. You testified against all of them. I told the truth. There's a difference." Lauren was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "I came here to ask for your help," she finally said. "My help? The baby's due next month. I can't afford the hospital bills. I can't afford anything. My parents disowned me. My friends won't talk to me. And I can't find a decent job because everyone in the industry knows what I did." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm desperate, Nick. I'm asking you to have mercy." I leaned back in my chair and studied her. 8 months ago, this woman had betrayed me, stolen from me, and tried to destroy my career. She dragged my brother into her lies, conspired with my enemies, and shown me no mercy when I was down. Now she was asking for mercy. "What exactly are you asking for?" I said. "A loan, just enough to cover the medical bills and get me through the first few months after the baby's born. I'll pay you back, I promise." "How? You're working part-time at a call center." "I'll figure something out. I'll work 2 jobs, 3 jobs if I have to." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a checkbook. "How much do you need?" Lauren's face lit up with hope. 20,000 would cover everything. I wrote out a check and handed it to her. She looked at it and her face fell. The check was for $1. Nick, you want to know why I'm only giving you $1? I said. Because 8 months ago, you had everything. You had a man who loved you, a good job, a nice house, financial security, and a future. And you threw it all away for $40,000 and a few nights with Paul Bennett. I stood up and walked to the window. You didn't just betray me, Lauren. You betrayed yourself. You had a choice between being honest and being greedy, and you chose greed. You had a choice between taking responsibility for your mistakes and blaming other people, and you chose to blame other people. I turned back to face her. And now you want me to rescue you from the consequences of your own choices. You want me to show you the mercy you never showed me. Lauren was crying openly now. But here's the thing, I continued. I'm not the same person I was 8 months ago. The man you betrayed was kind, forgiving, and naive. He would have given you the money, even after everything you did to him. I walked back to my desk and sat down. But that man is gone. You ended him when you decided to destroy his life. What's left is someone who understands that actions have consequences, and that mercy is earned, not given. Please, Lauren whispered. I'm begging you. You should have thought about that before you decided to screw me over. I pressed the intercom button. Sarah? Mrs. Carver is leaving now. Please escort her out. Lauren struggled to her feet, clutching the $1 check. You're going to regret this, she said. Someday, you're going to need help, and you're going to remember this moment. Maybe, I said, but I doubt it. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, looking out at the harbor and thinking about consequences. My consulting firm was thriving. I had 12 employees, a client list that read like a Fortune 500 directory, and a bank account that would have impressed my younger self. I'd bought a house in Newton, a BMW that was nicer than Paul's had ever been, and a wardrobe that cost more than Lauren's annual salary. But the real victory wasn't the money or the success. The real victory was that I'd learned who I really was. I wasn't the underdog anymore. I wasn't the nice guy who finished last. I wasn't the man who turned the other cheek and hoped for the best. I was the man who fought back. I was the man who won. And I was the man who showed no mercy to people who showed me none. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Tom, my brother. Did you hear? He said. Lauren had the baby. Good for her. She named him Nicholas. I was quiet for a moment. She's trying to guilt you, Tom continued. She's telling everyone that you're the father and you abandoned her. Let her talk. Anyone who matters knows the truth. Nick, are you okay? I mean, really okay? I looked around my office, at the awards on the wall, the contracts on my desk, the view of the city where I'd built my empire on the ashes of my enemies' careers. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I was. Lauren had tried to destroy me, and instead she'd created something far more dangerous than the man she'd betrayed. She'd created a man who understood that in this world you either win or you lose. And I had no intention of ever losing again. The wedding that never was had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Mercy is for people who deserve it. And some people don't deserve it at all.